Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about the risks in the global market, particularly within the context of rising protectionist policies that limit or hinder trade. At the U.S. Grains Council, it is our job to be the bridge between U.S. corn, sorghum, and barley growers, ethanol producers, and the agribusiness value chain, and the rest of the world that desires our commodities. Whether that is feed grains and dried distillers grains for livestock, sorghum and barley for both animal and human consumption, or ethanol for industrial and non-industrial uses. But too often, the opportunity for freer, fairer trade is inhibited by protectionist policies that create barriers. As we think about the future, especially post-COVID, the global competitiveness of the feed, food, and fuel promoted by the U.S. Grains Council are top of mind and at the top of our priority list. It's critical to expand global market access, ensure trading partners are complying with their commitments, and address unfair trade barriers through enforcement. Currently, 26 countries around the world have protectionist trade policies in place that fall into three categories: biotechnology issues that are monitored but not problematic or trade restricting, regulations that are concerning, including biotech approval delays, and highly restrictive biotech approvals and gene editing bans. We often think that having free trade agreements with different countries will remove most protectionist policies, and sometimes that is the case. But even with some of our closest trading partners, there are still issues that arise that limit trade. Take, for instance, Mexico. The US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, was enacted in July of last year, and before that, the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, was in place since 1994. But having a long-standing free trade agreement in place does not remove all challenges and trade irritants. The U.S. Grains Council remains concerned that Mexico is backsliding on its USMCA commitments with respect to sanitary and phytosanitary issues and biotechnology chapters of the agreement. Recently, the Mexican government issued a decree calling for a ban on the use and importation of glyphosate by or before January 24, as well as a ban on cultivation and use of genetically modified corn for human consumption, also by or before January 2024. And they've stopped new GM event approvals, not having approved any new traits in nearly 2 years. The Council continues to work with a variety of organizations in both the US and in Mexico to understand the full scope of this ban and its likely impacts. Ultimately, the decree's influence on grain supply and price would adversely impact Mexico's livestock sector, as well as its grain producing sector and the livelihoods they support. Over the last year, the US won both its countervailing duty cases in Peru. One case sought to apply duties on US corn exported to Peru, and the second was one brought against US ethanol that initially resulted in Peruvian authorities applying a 15-cent duty on US ethanol entering the country. This case was overturned on appeal earlier this year. Although these victories allow continued access to the Peruvian market for corn and ethanol, millions of dollars have been lost in court fees and time wasted that could have allowed the market to obtain these commodities in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. And in China, grain imports of corn and sorghum have skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. However, we have issues to work through regarding biotechnology approvals, and retaliatory tariffs are still in place for both ethanol and distillers grains. Navigating these complexities will be paramount to keeping trade moving to those who want it. We hope to see positive solutions presented in the near future to remove barriers to trade between our two nations. These are just a few of the trade limiting issues going on around the world that slow down or stop trade with other countries. Others that come to mind include Brazil's 20% tariff on US ethanol, minimum residue levels in the European Union, GM positions in various South Asian nations, and African countries that disallow US biofuels, distillers grains, and corn from entering their markets. The US Grains Council works around the world to remove barriers and keep markets open for free-flowing trade. The Council understands that growth for grains and ethanol is located outside the borders of the United States, and our success is built upon expanding markets, serving our customers, and facilitating better trade policy by engaging the world. That principle guides us in our top priorities and gives us a path forward. Addressing trade policy issues in virtually every market where we work will be key in combating the protectionist tendencies we've seen developing as a product of COVID-19 in countries around the world. We cannot go backward. From free trade agreement possibilities in Southeast Asia and Africa to USMCA compliance in Mexico, we must continue our work to keep these critical markets open to trade. Just a few of our many trade policy engagement goals include work with China, Brazil, and India, a focus on USMCA implementation, and a push for free trade agreements with the United Kingdom as well as Kenya. The U.S. Grains Council is resilient in finding ways to keep trade flowing globally because we know it's vital to the world's economic recovery after the hurdles we've all faced due to the pandemic. That's why the Council has never wavered from its mission of developing markets, enabling trade, and improving lives around the world, especially during this challenging time. The U.S. Grains Council works in nearly 60 countries to build lasting relationships with end users that benefit the entire marketing channel, offering technical and contracting education to help customers in all markets understand how to buy and use U.S. grains. We offer access to current data that demonstrates the advantages of U.S. origin grains. We have staff in markets around the world in which we work to help build market capacity and worldwide opportunity. We build awareness of U.S. grains via trade shows and conferences like this one to create better understandings between those who offer coarse grains and ethanol and those who demand them. We constantly seek to partner with industry leaders around the globe to bring about change for stronger, more dynamic importing industries. Navigating the pitfalls of trade policy with the goal of free trade ultimately will allow markets to win in the grain trade arena. The U.S. Grains Council strategy of relationship building can be a solution to some of the trade limiting efforts we see around the world.